And here we are back on the opening day of full road racing in the Tour de France, and it is the team of the Australian Stuart O'Grady who are now working hard at the front. The last time check we got was that 6 minutes and 40 seconds. I would imagine at this tempo they are now beginning to close it down quite rapidly. The boys in green and white here just looking for other sprinters. This is a very dangerous countryside for escapes, and all of the sprinters teams must work together. Paul, as we look at the peloton here, it's a fact, isn't it, that these sort of countrysides change the direction a lot. If you can break away, there's a chance, and so it's not just one team that will chase. All of the teams who feel they have sprinters will chase.
They certainly need to, because that was a fairly large advantage they gave to the three leaders. We have had surprises on the first open road stage of the Tour in the past, and if we cast our mind back to names like Claudio Chiappucci or Steve Bauer, they built their reputations on a long breakaway on the first day and getting themselves. This is Hincapie at the back. He must have had a problem, unless there's another rider from US Postal at the back end of the main field as well. Hincapie's obviously waited for somebody, because you see him looking over his shoulder. He's waited for one of the team leaders. I doubt if it's Armstrong, but he certainly has gone back attentively.
Well, we've swung to the back of the race. Now nobody on the radio tour. This is the exclusive race radio. People in there passing comments into our ears have mentioned why this split is on. It can be routine, of course, riders going back all the time, but this is the Alessio team here. It's likely to be Laurent Dufaux in a little bit of a spot of bother, but Hincapie was checking out who they were, because they also wanted to try, the US Postal wanted to get back there and help out as well, but maybe George was just going back for a drink.
Well, after 50 kilometres of a stage has been covered, you are allowed to go back to the team car and pick up drinks for your team leader. That may well be what Hincapie was doing. There doesn't seem to be any panic on at all at the moment.
Well, this is Angelo Furlan at the back here. They've gone back for him because he is a candidate for a victory today if they catch that breakaway. He's every chance of winning the sprint if things work out for him. Meanwhile, the Fassa Bortolo riders also sharing now with Lotto. Fassa Bortolo have Alessandro Patacchi here, 6 times a stage winner in the recent Tour of Italy or Giro d'Italia. McEwen's team are up there working hard, so as they must have been listening to our commentary, because all of the sprinters are bringing their men to the fore. They call them domestiques, the helpers, if you like, and that's exactly what they are. You can't take on the race and finish it off, so you've got to use your pawns to go to the front and work hard, and then hopefully keep yourself fresh, and then you can finish it off in the big sprint finish. Sounds easy.
It sounds easy, that's the practice, but doesn't always work that way. Good to see Ryoshiba Bolocchi at the front end of the main field in their pink jerseys that Once are riding here. They always, out of respect of the yellow jersey of leadership at the Tour de France, change their colours for this one race in July to ride in that pink Once squad as we rejoin the three leaders. There is Andy Flickinger there. He is the man most likely to take the yellow jersey if this breakaway was to succeed. And the strange thing about Andy Flickinger is he's the tallest bike raider in the race, alongside Forniciari, 1.93 m. That's well over 6 foot in height.
Certainly is. It looks like he's tall as well. And if you're just joining us, let me tell you that this breakaway of 3 is Christophe Mangeon, Walter Benetto, Andy Flickinger. They got away straight after the special sprint after only 12 miles or 19 kilometres today. The sprint won by Robin McEwen, who's picked up 6 points in his assault on the green jersey competition, but more importantly at the moment, the yellow jersey of Brendan McGee, the winner yesterday, got a 4-second time bonus there. There's the latest check of 6:10, and that 4 seconds bonus has unlocked him now from being equal on time with Britain's David Miller. So McGee will be happy with that, and the 4 seconds too has moved him a little bit away from the sprinters. So even if a sprinter wins today, there's every chance now that McGee will hang on to that yellow jersey at least for one more day. These 3 riders working extremely well together here, as we would expect at this stage of the race, but the gap is coming down. I would think after the break there will be inside 6 minutes their gap. It's going to be tight. Mangeon, the new leader of the King of the Mountains. We'll take a break.
Great prologue yesterday. You got to be extremely happy with how that went.
I am. I was sort of hoping for a top 10, but, you know, with the course being so fast and bumpy, I think you saw a lot of guys go fast who aren't necessarily GC contenders. So I'm happy with 12th place. I think some other contenders did much worse. So
Now in this first week, a lot of it is staying out of trouble. Do you have like one rider that's responsible for keeping you in the front, or is it a mixture of things? And is Rabobank going to be doing a lead-out train for Frere?
I do have a rider, big guy, Mark Lotz. It's like perfect draft for me. It's punch a big hole in the wind and really strong. And for Frere, he will be going for the time bonuses and the finish because he was probably the best sprinter yesterday in the prologue. And he's only 18 seconds out right now. And we do have two guys, Wouters and Hunter, who will, I think they'll do more positioning and not so much actually making the pace for him, but making sure that he's in the front.
Well, good luck today. Stay out of trouble.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Levi.
Well, thanks, Frankie. Good luck to Levi today, and we'll now rejoin the action. Well, Paul, we're looking now at this breakaway. It's coming down, just tickling now, 6 minutes exactly. As an ex-rider, are they going to pull them back? Time is running out.
I think they'll pull them back. These guys escaped. Let's not forget, after just 19 kilometers, just inside of 12 miles of racing, they were allowed their freedom. They built their lead up to 8 minutes and 45 seconds without the main field actually starting to put the pressure on. That's happening right now. And as the teams of the sprinters start to take a much greater interest on the front end of the main field, it's picking up the speed of the main peloton to 45, 46, 47 kilometers an hour. And we can see that time gap is coming down sensibly. It has come down 2 minutes in the last 20 kilometers, which puts them pretty much on course for my favorite recipe, losing 1 minute for every 10 kilometers of racing. So in theory, they'll get caught with about 20 kilometers to go.
Well, the sprinters here, it's all down to the teammates of the big sprinters. It's their job to chase them down, and I see there are 3 teams here being used specifically by their team leaders. The team of Robin McEwen, which is Lotto on the front, of Alessandro Patacchi, which is the white jersey just passing through the picture there, of Fassa Bortolo from Italy, and the green and white team of Stuart O'Grady, the Australian champion who rides on the French squad at Crédit Agricole. And they just seem to be leaving just those 3 teams, but other teams with sprinters, they won't be short on being told they've got to send men up to the front and lead the firing squad if they're thinking of planning to win a stage.
Well, the other teams are at the moment just sitting back for the moment to see what sort of progress those 3 teams are making on the lead set by the 3 men up the road, Mangin, Fickinger and Benetto, as we get a nice glimpse there of Bradley McGee. This man is a very title bike rider, 3 bronze medals at the Olympic Games, a world champion at the individual pursuit, Commonwealth Games champion. And I thought it was rather strange yesterday, Phil, to hear him say that he thought winning the yellow jersey at the Tour de France in his 100th anniversary was bigger than anything he's ever done in the sport before.
But you know, Paul, isn't pulling on the golden fleece, the maillot jaune, what all professional cyclists want to do? It is the pinnacle of the sport for many of these guys. Remember, we've had 100 years of the Tour de France. We have in fact had 90 tours, but we've only had 53 winners. There aren't many guys get the chance.
There are certainly not many guys get the chance. Not many guys get the chance to wear the yellow jersey, in fact. And I think that's why the man who went out and put in that sterling performance yesterday, Brad McKee, was so overjoyed. That's why the deception of David Miller was so great. He realized how important it was. He's worn the yellow jersey before, but he was going to dominate that prologue time trial yesterday, Phil. If it hadn't been for the mechanical incident, I feel he would have won the prologue by 5 or 6 seconds, and then he could have kept it for 3 or 4 days till we went to the team time trial.
Well, he was 5 seconds up at halfway, and I feel because of the way he fumbled with his chain and lost by a fraction of a second, he was probably more than 6, and he might have been 7 up as he ran into the finish.
Well, that's what it was looking like. Anyway, he's got to get his head back into gear right now because the Tour de France didn't finish yesterday. It only just started. There's still 3 weeks of bike racing left to go. And after today, once we put this Sunday behind us, there's still 3 Sundays to go till we get to the finish.
Yes, and it must be a strange feeling for the bike riders because this year, 29% of the field are first-time riders in the Tour. It's 55 riders coming to this race of the 198 for the first time. And, well, remember Nick Gates speaking to you yesterday, another Australian, Paul. He thought he'd seen big races like the Tour of Switzerland and the Tour of Belgium until he came to the Tour de France. Looking now at the peloton here, being driven on by the Crédit Agricole. The gap is beginning to come down quite rapidly now. 5 minutes 38 seconds to the 3 riders on the attack as we're running in to the last 70 kilometers of today's stage. We are going to be treated to a great race towards the end. Don't go far away.
You think about what makes a premium tour.
Now with a glance here at the peloton, inside 5.5 minutes behind the 3 breakaways who have led for much of the day today on this opening road race stage. Tricky little split here. The gendarme waving the yellow flag, which is a colour which means danger in France, warning them of the traffic island ahead. Here are the 3 leaders. Sitting at the back is Walter Benetton. He won't be there for long. In the middle is Christophe Mangeon. And at the front is Andy Fleekinger. And we're only 63 kilometres to go now, and approaching a 5-minute advantage only. At one stage, they were almost 9 minutes in the lead. In fact, that's a time check just coming up there on that yellow motorbike. I think there's the man with the board. Unfortunately, he forgot to show us on the television. As he now heads on, we think it said 5 minutes and 2 seconds. And that would be about right, I would think, at 63 to go. All right, well, Sam Posey is one of our wonderful narrators, and he's been looking at the colourful history of the Tour de France.
From the heights of the Galibier, Mont Ventoux, and the Tourmalet to the pancake flats of northern France and the hallowed Champs-Élysées, the Tour de France is larger than life. It is at once the longest, toughest, and possibly loneliest sporting event ever. A multi-million-dollar spectacle played out over the course of 3 weeks every year before a worldwide audience of several billion fans. But it wasn't always that way. The race that made legends out of riders such as Merckx, Anquetil, Bartoli, Coppi, and Armstrong began as a publicity stunt for a French sports newspaper with flagging circulation. It was Henri Desgrange who organized the first Tour de France. Desgrange was a legal clerk by training, but a cyclist at heart. He was the first man to establish and hold the hour record on a bike. In 1900, he was picked to head a new sports paper, L'Auto Velo. Soon, a circulation war erupted between Desgrange's L'Auto Velo and the rival Le Velo. L'Auto circulation was dropping fast, and Desgrange, dining in late 1902 with his assistant Géo Lefebvre, solicited a scheme to keep the paper in business. Lefebvre broached the idea of a long-distance race in 6 stages, like a 6-day track race. It would cover all of France. As usual, the boss took all the credit. And on January 17, 1903, the first Tour de France was announced in the pages of L'Auto. 2,438 kilometers in 6 stages, beginning May 31st and allowing for many rest days, ending on July 5th back in Paris. It was a grand plan, but just weeks before the event, only 15 riders had entered, and the Tour was in doubt. Desgrange, desperate, reduced the entry fee and moved the event to July to buy more time. The delay worked, and on July 1st, 60 intrepid riders set off from the Café Réveil Matin in the Paris suburb of Montgeron on their grand tour of France. Their tradition had begun. Frenchman Maurice Garin finished the race in 94 hours and 33 minutes, a full 3 hours ahead of his nearest rival on overall time. By the end of the first tour, L'Auto's circulation had risen from 20,000 to 130,000, and shortly thereafter its rival, Le Velo, folded. Desgrange's scheme to boost circulation had worked beyond anyone's wildest dreams. But more importantly, in the process, the stunt had become something bigger than anyone planned. The publication, L'Auto, is a distant memory, but the creation that Géo Lefebvre dreamed up and Henri Desgrange presided over for almost 30 years established itself as one of the world's premier sporting events that has transcended its national cultural status and continues to capture the attention of the world every July. What's more, there is little doubt that the Tour de France will endure and thrive, perhaps for another 100 years.
And there they are in the thick of the action in the year 2003. Thanks, Sam. That was a lovely look back at the Tour de France. And Vyacheslav Yekimov is the man driving them along, the oldest man on the Tour. We'll take another break. And here's the peloton easing off for the first time as they're around about 4.5 minutes the gap at the moment. There it is for you, and 58.6 kilometers to go. And they're now all questioning who should be driving up on the front. Well, Infiniti is accelerating the future and takes a look today at a young and up-and-coming rider. Today's obvious choice is the prologue winner of yesterday and the current yellow jersey, Bradley McGee. Bradley McGee yesterday making a great start in the prologue. He has become only the third Australian ever to wear the yellow jersey behind Phil Anderson and Stuart O'Grady. He is a world pursuit champion. He's been a junior world champion. He has got bronze medals and Commonwealth Games gold medals. Bradley McGee, now 27 years of age, stands at 6 feet from Blacktown, Australia. That's just outside of Sydney. He's having a great tour. And all that after only one day of the Tour de France for him. Oh, Paul, the peloton, it's a tricky old course, this, switching around all these little towns. It is a super area to be a racing cyclist here, isn't it?
It certainly is. It's great countryside, good roads, nice small roads where the riders don't have to worry about too much for the traffic circulation when they go out for training. Here we're going through some of the most magnificent small towns in the area, but you can see how long the peloton is starting to stretch out. That is because they're turning the screws on at the front end of the main field. The teams of the sprinters want to have their glory. They will know what the finish is like, and I have to say it's going to be a very fast and I think tricky finish as well. In the past, we've had teams who have been dominant in the lead out. Team Telecom, for example, would lead the sprint out for Eric Zabel. I'm not quite sure what their direction is going to be for the moment, because they feel Santiago Botero has a great chance of getting himself up in the overall classification. They may well try and lead another team up to do the sprinting and the setting up, and that is where Robbie McEwen may come undone, because his team, I don't think, has the big power as does the team of a Mario Cipollini, for example, to take the pace up to 60 kilometers an hour for the last 5 or 6 kilometers.
I do absolutely agree, and Robbie's making them work from day one today, because he wants to get a good lead in that points competition. The thing about Robbie McEwen is he will survive the mountains. He's proven that in the past. He knows how to ride the mountains. He's not going to be first over the top. But you know, you have to finish every day in the Tour de France within the time limit. McEwen, I think, in the mountains, Paul, knows better than most how to get through them safely.
Well, he knows better than most, and sometimes he tries to bend the rules slightly because he tried to get himself inside the time limit on one stage at the Tour of Italy a couple of years ago. Thought a handle of the team car might be an idea, but the judges thought better and sent him home packing quickly. Yes,
he was on the next plane out of town, disqualified from the Giro for that. But he was so far behind he wasn't affecting the course of the race. Koos Moerenhout is the man doing a lot of work here for the Lotto team and driving them on with the help of Faso Bortolo.
I do think that Robbie McEwen has changed an awful lot in the last couple of years, Phil. We always regarded Robbie as a sprinter who would take advantage of other men and try and sprint from the rear and hide in the main pack. He seems to have built himself up, and in the latter part of his 20s he's built up a lot of bulk in the top part of his body, becoming a much stronger and much more powerful sprinter. The kind of guy, in fact, who nowadays can lead the sprints out from the front rather than trying to come off somebody's wheel.
Well, his 6th Tour is what he's about to accomplish now. He's such a remarkable rider. He has so far finished in every Tour de France he started in. That's a wonderful record, you know. I know we talk about Joop Zoetemelk having ridden 16 and finished 16. That was exceptional. Phil Anderson, another Australian, I think he rode either 12 or 13. 13, and he finished every one. Thank you, Paul.
Well, in fact, let's not forget another man going to hopefully go round his 13th Tour de France this year is one of Lance Armstrong's teammates, the oldest man in the race, Yaroslav Ekimov, 37 years of age. This is his 13th Tour de France this year. That man has been racing since he was a junior, 16, 17 years old, part of the great, in those days, Soviet Union track team before the whole place fell to pieces. He rode then for Russia. Then he was able to turn professional for the Panasonic team. And what a great performer he's been throughout. It was sad when he retired, but what a great move to come back into the sport and then straight back into the Tour de France. Such is the respect that Lance Armstrong has for him. I feel Lance was instrumental in asking him to come back to the sport and try and race again.
Yeah, and he speaks fluent English, by the way, because he spent so long racing on English teams. Now, people here looking at each other saying, we've got to keep this pressure on, boys, otherwise we're not going to bring them back. But at 3:58, they're coming back rather quickly at the moment. The catch not that far away. We'll take a break.
Makers of innovative, high-performance premium vehicles. And by Power Bar, the official sponsor of the Tour de France and the fuel of Lance. Be great.
And you are watching the Tour exclusively here on OLN. We're going to get back to all the action of Stage 1 and Phil and Paul in just a few minutes, but right now it is time for a U.S. Postal update. Bob Roll, yesterday, an impressive performance by the team as expected.
U.S. Postal coming through big for Lance Armstrong. He's got to be very pleased with the performance of Victor Hugo Peña, who was 5th on the stage, Vyacheslav Ekimov just behind Lance himself in 10th, and George Hincapie having a great ride, coming up with the goods for 13th place. He led the prologue for quite a bit of the race, finally being passed by Aymar Zubeldia. And I think that Lance, at the end of the day, would be very pleased. The first, or the next, I should say, rendezvous with the GC battle will be in the team time trial in just a couple of days' time, just a few days' time. And U.S. Postal doing a great job in the prologue. He's going to be very pleased and has confidence that the team will come through for the team time trial. That's the next rendezvous with Destiny for our GC picture.
And boy, Victor Hugo Peña, who would have said he would beat his team leader too?
Yes, Victor Hugo Peña, very strong bike racer, and he did a great job. He was 5th. And you got to be pleased with that. Lance, I'm sure he's psyched with the way the team rode. Victor Hugo Peña, most certainly one of the most overall gifted riders, and he did a good job to get 5th in the prologue. I think that might be the best prologue he's ever ridden. Even though he is a very good time trialist, he won a stage with the Giro d'Italia in the time trial. Watch out for Victor Hugo Peña to take some big pulls in the team time trial.
Boy, it's nice to see a very strong U.S. Postal team for the 2003 Tour de France. Well, let's go back to all the action of Stage 1 now, and Phil and Paul. Guys?
Well, there we are now, and driving the bunch again at the front of the race are the riders from Lotto, and doing extremely well. These are getting out of the twisty roads now as we move on to the longer straight roads in open countryside. Very soon these guys are going to pick up the helicopter, which sadly they will see hovering above the 3 leaders.
That's the difficult thing about bike racing these days, because there is so much television coverage and press coverage that you get a chance to see who's out on the course. And there's a little sign there for Go Dada, and I'm not quite sure who that is for. But
in front, Dada, it says. But we don't know which dad he was talking to. But as we often read many stories issued by various members of the British press that cyclists are impotent, I can assure you that if we add up all the kids of this lot, there'd be quite a big peloton.
There certainly will. 3 minutes 35 seconds is the new time check, so it's coming down still fairly sensibly. This is going to be a very difficult year for Lance Armstrong. He admits himself there are so many challenges he's got to keep an eye on, and the challenges come from so many different corners of Europe. There are quite a few Italians who have a very good chance of being a threat in the big mountain passes. The Spaniards this year, I think, could come up with a big surprise, and the man we're all looking to see how he performs on the big mountain stages is Iban Mayo from the small Euskaltel-Euskadi team. But he this year managed to stay up alongside Lance Armstrong in the Dauphiné Libéré on many occasions, and in fact was not worried at all about launching some pretty severe attacks on the big alpine passes.
Absolutely. We are looking so much to going to the mountains, which come very early on in this year's Tour de France. We're down in the Alps with classic finishes at Morzine, rather, just at the foot of the Avoriaz climb, a vicious route into that beautiful alpine town. The next day we go to Alpe d'Huez for a mountaintop finish there, and we move on to Gap and then down to the Pyrenees. Paul, a very classic route. We're visiting all of the towns, all 6 of them that were on the route back in 1903, but because the mountains came in 1910, they are now permanently in the Tour. It's a beautiful route.
It's a magnificent route, and strangely enough it goes round exactly the same way as the first Tour de France did, except now, as you said a couple of days ago, it makes a slight incursion more over to the east to find the Alps, and a bigger incursion down towards the south of the country to go into the Pyrenees. But it is a magnificent route, and certainly one to win. But there will be an awful lot of challenges to Lance Armstrong. I don't think we'll see him being quite so dominant on the first day in the mountains this year, because with a descent down towards the finish line in Morzine, he may well wait until the second mountain stage and look more like doing something special on the slopes of the Alpe d'Huez, a climb that he knows he's won there before and would like to probably win there again.
Just passing briefly out of our shot there, Nicky Sorensen, who is the new champion of Denmark. He won the title exactly a week ago today, and he's popping back to have a chat with the team manager. His team leader is Tyler Hamilton of the United States, who had a very good prologue time trial yesterday. His job to help Tyler on these very difficult flat stages. Tyler can look after himself when it comes to the high mountains. This is the biggest thinking machine you will ever see. 195 riders down there, every one of them thinking and planning what to do next, how to outwit the other one, how to outthink them, even though they appear to be all riding along in that big pack together.
There were so many different permutations when you look at a professional bike race, because in fact, although we talk about the sprinters, there are so many different kinds of sprinters as well. The incredible thing about the sprinters is, in fact, they can either be acrobatic sprinters or sprinters who go with sheer and absolute power.
Yes, indeed, and these are the three riders who are setting the pace today. I take my hat off to them because they have added interest to the opening stage of the Tour de France. As we look back at the peloton now, and I don't think the gap can be much more than 2 minutes at the moment. As we see them now, and the last check we got was 3 minutes 30, 3 minutes 18. Now it's knocking down quite quickly. And these time gaps are read from the air by the satellite system, so they're pretty accurate. As we see the peloton interminably coming forward now. Just the odd rider coming through the convoy of cars, tagging onto the back of the pack. Because the sprinters are not using all of their 9-man team. They're using just 1 or 2 riders for the chase back. They're keeping the others to control the race once they do catch those 3 leaders. It's a complicated old business, isn't it? But then it is the Tour de France. So we'll take another short break. Join us quickly. Welcome back. We're looking here at the Chateau of Fontainebleau, but we've long since passed it on today's stage of the Tour de France now, as the riders head up towards the finish with around about 45 kilometers still to ride. The Lotto riders are working extremely hard now, and it's not going to be long before the 3 leaders are caught. The latest time gap is 1 minute and 48 seconds. For 1 minute 48, it's not going to be long now.
It certainly isn't. They have really accelerated over the last few kilometres. I think those 3 riders now, Phil, realise they're not going to succeed. They've actually turned off a little bit because they realise to finish the Tour de France, you cannot blow away all of your energy on day 1. They realise they're going to get caught. They're probably just riding a nice steady tempo, waiting to get caught. They realise the writing is on the wall. They know the main field will be picking it up to 50 kilometers an hour right now, and you can see by the long length of this main field that the pressure is certainly very much on at the front, and we will, I expect, have a rip-roaring sprint. And for the moment, there's not one of the sprinters stands head and shoulders above the rest.
Looking at some of the equipment here, these little track mitts the riders wear. Some people often ask why. The answer is to stop getting sore calluses on your hands from gripping the handlebars so tightly.
The other reason as well is if you're involved in a crash and you go over the handlebars, the first thing you normally do is put your hands out, and if you do that, you take all of the skin off the palms of the hand, and I've done that on 1 or 2 occasions, and it takes an awful long time to heal up.
Very painful, very soft skin, unless of course you like Paul Sherwen, a very tough man, right, Paul?
That's good. You're always a man for compliments. That's what I like about you. I actually never liked wearing gloves when I was racing, and the one time I did crash, I took all the skin off the palm of my hand, and the doctor forced me to wear gloves for a couple of weeks while the wounds healed up. And then once I started getting rid of the gloves again, I crashed onto the same injury, and it certainly wasn't a lot of fun.
Well, it just shows you some people never learn, do they? At the rear of the peloton now, which is the big pack in the Tour de France, Luca Paolini, a good young rider just passing through, but this is the man who's enjoying the finest moment of his career. He did the hard work yesterday. Bradley McGee looks like he got his lunch on the extension there. Yes, he has. A good job to make sticky substances these days. Well, Brad here, having won the time trial yesterday, is now enjoying a day out as race leader, and at the very start of the day he snatched 2nd place in the bonus sprint at Corbeil, which gave him 4 more seconds off his overall time, and as a result of that he has now put himself up as a clear leader. Everybody else down there all together today. Lance Armstrong, the 4 times winner of the Tour, he's safely ensconced in the peloton, watching things as they come at him, and you can bet he won't miss many tricks as he goes through what are considered by race leaders as a dangerous situation in the race, because you can make mistakes here.
You certainly can make mistakes, but you could just see the US Postal Service riding fairly close to the front. But the light blue jersey there, you could see just briefly for a few seconds, that was the Team Bianchi. This was a team that was reformed after Team Close literally exploded because of lack of finances. They came together just about a month before the Tour de France. They were able to convince the Society Tour de France that they were putting together a seriously structured team. You have to prove financial ability to put together a team at this level of the sport. They were able to do all the documentation in about 15 days, and now they're at the Tour de France with Jan Ullrich at the helm. And what an incredible performance yesterday, finishing 4th in the opening prologue. He didn't know where he was in the sport, but now, Phil, after that 4th place yesterday, he certainly knows he's back.
Yes, and I hope he's back to stay as well. Terrific competitor, a man who is built with, as they say, a big engine, a huge lung capacity, and without doubt one of the most talented cyclists we've ever seen. But you've got to prove that fact. It's no good telling everybody how good you are if you don't cross the line first. Big test this for Jan. These are the 3 leaders now. Funnily enough, they started to just hover now. The gap is no longer coming down. We're getting contradictory time gaps coming in from the race. But basically, it's hovering around about 2.5 minutes. So it's a good lead. Yoshiba Bolocki sent his boys in pink up as well to the front now, so a new team comes up.
Well, the reason it's hovering right now is because the teams of the sprinters realize they can catch those 3 leaders anytime they want. So they're just taking a slight respite before they turn up the gas once again for the last 20 or 30 kilometers. They know they can pull them back with any amount of ease, and that's why they're just resting for a few moments.
Another little right-hand turn there for the riders, a gaggle of people. You never get lost on the route of the Tour de France because the crowd line the route all the way. This year it is from Paris back to Paris. A 3-week race now. We've left the big capital. We'll be back in 3 weeks' time. We'll take a break. A warm welcome not just to our viewers in the United States but also in Canada, because remember, the World Cycling Championships will be in Hamilton this year, and many of these riders will be in Canada, and I hear the course there in Hamilton is absolutely superb. Well, there's a nice view from the helicopter as we look down on the main field, and there's the latest gap for you. It's down now just on 25 miles from the finish, 2 minutes 9 seconds. Quite apparent now, Paul, they have slowed it down a bit.
Well, they really have. I think it's because they knew that gap had plummeted down to the 2-minute mark. 40 kilometers to go. Normally they can wipe out a 5 or 6 minute advantage. It's great to see Jan Ullrich riding like this, Phil. He's had a turbulent year, if we could say. He had serious problems, had knee injury, and then unfortunately for him he was caught in an out of training, out of competition doping test, and he was found to have consumed ecstasy at a nightclub. He then pranged his Porsche after a good night out on the town.
Into a bicycle rack.
Into a bicycle rack in the middle of town, and took off, not leaving his name and address. But unfortunately he was so famous they were quite easily able to track him down. But I think now he's got himself back onto the straight and narrow, and I have very rarely seen Jan Ullrich looking quite so fit and slim as he is right now, and he's attentive. He's riding at the front end of the main field. He's in good form. The fact that he's riding up here shows that he wants the team to rally around him over the next 3 weeks.
Yes, it's when team leaders have to prove to their helpers, the other 8 men on the team, they're up to the game. If they can do that, they win that team's confidence, and that team will ride their hearts out to keep their man in the action.
A lot of people have also criticised Jan Ullrich's team as saying, well, it's too weak if he wants to win the Tour de France. But let's not forget, a certain man, an American rider by the name of Greg LeMond, won the Tour de France, and on the final day when it finished on the Champs-Élysées, he only had 2 other teammates with him. He used the team of Laurent Fignon to control the race throughout, and that is what I would expect Jan Ullrich will do in this event. He knows that Lance Armstrong is the man who wants to win the Tour de France. He knows that Armstrong's team will control at all the critical moments. So this year, all Jan Ullrich has to do is base his strategy on Armstrong. And if he can stay with him for as long as possible in the mountains, then see if he can rival him in the individual time trials, which he did in the prologue rather well.
I think he did, but he won't want to be reminded of what happened last time he went up Alpe d'Huez with Lance Armstrong, because Armstrong looked at him and left him as the climb began. But we're a couple of years on from that now. Well, this is the armada of riders here, of motorcyclists and cars, referees. The yellow vehicles are neutral service vehicles. They will give bicycles and wheels to any rider no team preference whatsoever. When you get a small breakaway, they put the neutral service in, although the team managers have the right to come forward. They can communicate with these riders. The majority these days have little radios, so they can talk to them through their radio systems. And by the way, the team cars these days have even television sets in them. Because of the saturation coverage of the Tour de France in France, they can tune into the same pictures we're watching, and they can radio the riders and tell them who is shirking at the back, who is chasing, and what exactly is going on. Not something I agree with, but that's the way it is.
Well, it's the evolution of the sport, Phil, and you've got to keep up with the 21st century, you know.
Well, it's only my 31st tour, Paul, so I'm probably a bit too old for this game.
I don't think so. A few more years to go. I hope so, anyway. More seriously, this is actually starting to heat up towards the end. We're seeing there the tournesol. Those are the sunflowers that adorn this part of France as we always come here in July. It always gives a chance for the photographers to run off into the middle of the field and produce some incredible photos. It really is a magnificent sport when you think about the pictures, the way it depicts this country of France, as it does every year and has done ever since the first inception of the Tour de France back in 1903.
Yeah, the tournesols, or the sunflowers, as Paul said, they look something like overgrown, well-cultivated weeds up in the north of France at this time of the year. But as we get down to the south, where the temperature has been much warmer over the last 4 to 5 weeks, you will find the flowers are out and they are magnificent. Well, the peloton are still doing their job. All the helpers still staying in touch at the front here. And there are some great sprinters on this year's race. We talk of Robbie McEwen because he won the green jersey last year for the first time by any Australian, and he went home a hero. He comes from Queensland, by the way, just on the outskirts of Brisbane, but he married a Belgian, Angelique, and he lives in Belgium with his family. Ewan McEwen was born last year. We always giggle over the name when Robbie told us he was calling him Ewan McEwen. But we're getting used to it now, aren't we?
We are getting used to Ewan McEwen. Actually, just talking about some of the favourites, Phil, one of the favourites we actually never saw yesterday on any of the coverage was Levo Leipheimer. He actually put in a fairly fine performance to come across the line in 12th place. But I think everybody was rather excited about everything else that was going on in the bike race, and the producer of the host broadcaster here from the Tour de France forgot to show Leipheimer, who lost himself just a mere 11 seconds. I think the gap is coming down pretty rapidly right now. This is just a casual bumping of shoulders going on here as we go through 132 kilometres. We're just coming up to the third and final sprint point of the day at Maupertuis, and that is where there will be 6, 4 and 2 seconds on the line. Now, if these guys just survive going through there, it would be a very nice day for Bradley McGee, because that means he will have more than 20 seconds advantage over the big sprinters. So there's not likely going to be a change in the overall classification, and he will have succeeded in keeping hold of his jersey for one more day.
Yeah, I think you might find that the rider at the back here in the blue shorts, Andy Flickinger, will go for this because he is the highest placed overall. He'll go for it because he'll want to wipe out his deficit from the time trial. Just in case they stay away, he will be the automatic new yellow jersey, and you never know. So he's lining up here behind Walter Benetton. Christophe Mangeon at the back has already got the lead in the King of the Mountains. He'll be on the podium at the end of the day. But Flickinger is waiting till the last moment to go over the top of Walter Benetton. There he goes. Last time we went through it was Flickinger, Benetton, Mangeon. And so it looks as though it's going to be Mangeon getting second, and Andy, wow, he's gone. But he'll wait for him over the top.
I'll tell you what, Phil, it always cracks me up at the start of the Tour de France, because they're looking for points to put in King of the Mountains and sprints. And on another day, this may well have been a King of the Mountains point, because right now that was certainly not a fast, flat sprint finish. But Flickinger getting the advantage up there and putting the other riders into a certain amount of difficulty as he gets himself 6 points in the green jersey competition and a 6-second time bonus.
So he's now, in fact, in the overall classification, 6 seconds off the yellow jersey of Brad McGee. So he only has to win by 6 seconds. We didn't even have to win by 6 seconds, because on all stages of the Tour de France, the first 3 riders to finish the day receive 20 seconds, 12 seconds and 8 seconds, and that comes off their overall time. So Flickinger is in a very good position now, but I think it's going to change in the next few minutes. We are around about 34 kilometres now only to go to the finish.
Well, there is Cedric Vasseur, the Cofidis rider, on the left-hand side.
Oh, we're looking down at quite a rise. When you see it from this angle, Paul, the little climb up towards that finishing sprint in Montpetus is rather steep.
It certainly is rather steep. Would have caught one or two of these riders off guard, I think. It's always difficult, you know, because these riders feel every night they look at a book which is called the Race Bible. That's got all the information of the race route, the run-ins to the finish, exactly where the final kilometre is. It gives you an idea where the corners are going to be. But when you see a sprint point, you normally expect it to be completely flat. And this one certainly isn't. There's confirmation of that third sprint. It's Flickinger ahead of Mangin there in second place, and Walter Beneteau of the Brioche La Boulangère team getting himself third place and 2 seconds time bonus. This is certainly not very much of a big sprint, is it, Phil?
No, just keeping this Nick Gates. It's not Nick Gates. I thought it was Nick Gates of the Lotto rider, but he's just started to smile. It's not him. But looking at the, so you get 6 points for towards the green jersey competition, which is the competition that McEwen is hunting for today. But you get many more for winning the sprint, and that is what McEwen is holding out for. This is the peloton as they've now passed through the sprint, so they too now are working on 36 kilometers to go, and the gap is closing down. Well, as the peloton continue now in towards the last 20 miles of the day, we'll take a break, and it's not long now before they'll be all together. See you shortly. Peloton rushes by now, racing into the last 21 miles of today's stage, heading for Meaux in the Tour de France on the first full day of racing. In the yellow jersey, Bradley McGee of Australia, the winner yesterday. Well, a rather quick look at the time check there, but it continues to come down. As again, you wouldn't think these shots were coming from a helicopter, but they're incredible shots. This man is hovering about 6 feet above the crops here.
It's amazing the technology in advance of bringing TV pictures from the roads of the Tour de France to the viewers around the world. It really does seem, when you look at a shot from that helicopter, it's almost as if the camera was sitting on a tripod in the field. As we get confirmation now that the time gap is down to 1 minute and 57 seconds. The speed on the main field, Phil, is starting to pick up once again. They're starting to get agitated on their first day out on the open road. Yesterday, everybody rode all alone over 6.5 kilometres, but right now they've been a solid pack since the very start, apart from the 3 men who escaped after just 19 kilometres of racing. And those 3 men went in a counter-attack after the first sprint point of the day. Mangin, Beneteau and Flickinger. And this is the rear end of the main field. This is a dangerous place to be, because although there is not much wind today, I have noticed once or twice the small flags at the side of the road of the spectators and supporters are starting to push the riders across the road because of the fact that this is a slight crosswind starting to build up, and that makes it dangerous because every rider wants to conserve energy. He wants to ride in the shelter of the man in front of him, keeping himself out of the wind. And when that battle starts to happen, there's very, very often, especially on the first days, a touch of wheels.
The crosswinds are the big dangerous winds which professional cyclists either love or hate. If you're feeling strong, you love them because you can roar at the front and rip the field to shreds. But if you're not feeling strong, you hang.
Number 3, just a quick glimpse of number 3 there. That's the new boy on Lance Armstrong's team, Manuel Beltran. And the back of the field, this is Luis Perez, number 67, one of the riders from Cofidis yesterday, Phil, who had an incident with his chain coming off as well.
Indeed, he did. Well, as the peloton continue to work out just how they're going to close down this very small time gap now, and despite the long straight roads, they're making a meal of it. The finish is getting closer as we speak. We'll see if they catch him when we come back.
Hello, everybody. We are in the town of Meaux, France, the finishing point for stage 1. Of course, we are going to get back to Phil and Paul in just a few minutes, but right now, Bob Roll, I want to talk about what happened in the prologue yesterday of just a terrible mishap for Cofidis rider David Miller. Explain how a chain comes off.
Well, the chain came off, I think, because they did not affix the front derailleur, which is also a guide chain. Here's a little replay. I can assure you he's not trying to tie his shoe there. He's trying to get his chain back on there. Luckily, he didn't lose his finger right there reaching back down. But let the biblical proportion grinding of teeth begin for David Miller there, squandering a great chance to win the prologue, get the first yellow jersey of this tour, and that could be the difference between a successful tour and a very good season. and absolutely bitter tears. Huge disappointment.
Yeah, and he is not the only one on his team either that had chain problems yesterday. Well, our own Frankie Andreu caught up with David Miller to find out his reaction about yesterday's mishap.
I'm here with David Miller, and yesterday the prologue, that was one of the most exciting finishes I've ever seen. Explain to me a little bit what happened.
I was just flying. I was floating, could do no wrong. And there was 600 meters to go. Coming out the last corner, my chain just bounced off the chainring, just bounced off. And I went down, looked down, I couldn't get it out because I had no front radar, so I had to lean down and try and get it out. And it took me, it felt like an eternity. It was jammed, and I stuck it out. Eventually got it back on, and then it just took so long to get it back on, and I was thinking, and then...
At the time when it came off, did you think you lost? Or when you started, I saw when you started re-accelerating, you were sprinting. Yeah. Did you realize how close it was?
No, I just thought, this is the Tour de France, I'm not giving up, you know? I mean, normally in a prologue, you know what prologues are like. You make one corner wrong, it's over. I didn't realize I was just like 10 seconds in front of that point. So, yeah, I mean, it's just Tour de France, you never give up. So I just came back out and I thought, right, let's go.
Well, good luck in the following stages, David. Thanks.
And David Miller, lucky he didn't take a finger off there. Well, have you ever had 1,000 pounds of bowls snorting down your neck? Well, experience the running of the bowls from the comfort of your own sofa. That is tomorrow, July 7th on OLN at 7 p.m. Eastern. And right now, let's get back to the action. The riders nearing the end of stage 1. Again, it finishes right here in Meaux, France.
Beautiful view of the riders as we look from the helicopter again. A little bit of a rise now. David Miller still safely in this field. Paolo Bettini with that green top to his jersey. He's the champion of Italy. He was behind the race recently, but I think it wasn't for anything particular. He's obviously got straight back into the action. 26 kilometers to go, 1 minute and 21 seconds. I have to say, Paul, they've let these boys hang out to dry today.
They really have. They took off at 19 kilometers, and they knew, I think, about 20 kilometers ago that they could catch these riders whenever they wanted to, which is why we've seen them holding back. They're not full on at the moment. And what worries me about today's sprint, Phil, is there is no team, I think, that will be superbly dominant as we go inside of 25 kilometers to go. I don't think there's a team that is going to dedicate themselves to making a serious line out at 50, 55 kilometers an hour, as we've seen many times in the past from a team like Mario Cipollini's team, for example. And that makes me think that we could be looking today at a very dangerous sprint with a lot of riders taking risks to stay at the front end of the main field.
You might well be right. It is a good sprint finish, though. Just one or two tricky little bends as we approach towards the finish in Meaux. Should be fun. There's the big pack now getting thick at the front, which means riders at the nose are slowing down. Others are taking the opportunity to move up a few positions in the peloton. Travel amongst the peloton is not easy at this stage. Welcome back. We're now closing down towards the finish. We're about 23 kilometers to go on this opening road race stage of the Tour de France. Heading for Meaux now. We're looking at the riders from Fassa Bortolo on the front, and the gap has come down to exactly a minute, while out on his own now has gone Andy Fleekinger, leaving behind his two erstwhile breakaway companions, Beneteau and Mangin. But they are still, all three of them, ahead of the field, and they're actually telling us now, as you can see, it is 64 seconds, 65 seconds the gap. But either way, they are right on the sharp end of the peloton now and well in sight of being picked up. And I think the reason they're not being picked up is simply because these riders can't make up their minds whether to haul them in, knowing that the other teams will launch an attack if they do that. Now it's 11 seconds is the split, and it's 1 minute 4 from the main field to the leader, Andy Fleekinger. We might well pick up the leader here. Yes, we have. Here he is. Our helicopter's gone forward to him. And I just can't get over the fabulous pictures coming out of that helicopter today. They use a special camera they call a Wes cam. It floats in its own setting, and it's rock solid. And you'd think we're on a motorbike alongside the rider here, but we're not close enough to blow him away. Don't worry about the rotor blades, as we're now seeing Andy Fleekinger. Last desperate efforts of what will surely be the last effort of the day to win the stage before the sprinters will lick their lips. And we've got plenty of them on what is always, by tradition, the opening day of the Tour de France is a vicious finish for the sprinters. Now we'll have a look at this. Maybe as we see Flickinger here, he'll look over his shoulder and see exactly where the two riders are behind. But let's see if we can show you a replay of the attack, because he did go pretty quickly. Let's have a look. This is Walter Benetton. And there is Christophe Mangeon, and then rushing into the picture is Andy Flickinger. Little rise, giving it his best shot. Just as he did this, he might have heard the call of 1 minute, as we did, and he thought, that's it. He's got to go desperately on his own and see if he can do it. So the other two look over, seeing where the rest are. Holding to the right of the road here, Andy Flickinger. There's the two riders he left about 2 kilometers down the road. The race referee, Martin Swinkels, is out of his car there, just keeping an eye on when the chase is coming. His job, of course, to keep all the vehicles out of any closing gap of riders, because the riders will use the cars as a carrot, and that's very unfair on the attackers of the day. He'll clear the gap and make a void, and then it's up to the riders to use only their own efforts to close it.
Well, I'm not too sure on the sense in this attack here right now, Phil, because as we clear now under 20 kilometers to go, that's about 25 minutes of racing for the man at the front end of the bike race. It's rather strange that he's only opened up an advantage of 10 or 15 seconds over the two chasers. If he thought they were going to survive, he should really have stayed with the two men that were with him, because they still have a certain amount of energy that they could dedicate to staying off the front end of the main field. But almost certainly all of them are going to get swept up before we charge into the outskirts of Meaux.
Well, we've been saying it for about an hour, Paul, and they haven't swept them up yet, but I think you're right. The Euskadel Euskadi team in the orange jerseys creeping up on the left of our picture. They've got sprinters on board as well, but perhaps not quite as fast as some of the other teams. That's why Lotto are driving hard for Robbie McEwen. They're filling the whole road up here. It's getting rather crowded as they pass under the banner at 20 kilometers from the finish. That's 12 miles. 12 miles will be covered in about 23 minutes today. We'll see you very soon. The Benetton being swept up. Just going in before him is Christophe Mangeon. Those leaders have now been put back in their place. We still have Andy Flickinger just a little bit further up the road, but that catch, I would suggest, is very imminent, and it's Pataki's team and McEwen's team who are driving on here. There's the latest time gap, Paul, 50 seconds, so he has actually stretched it ever so slightly.
Well, he stretched it over the two men that were with him, but in fact he's losing against the main field. His last time check to the main field was 1 minute and 6 seconds. He's 17 kilometers to go to the finish. And a very brave effort, I've got to say, Phil, by Flickinger to go off the front. But really, he knows, and he must know in the back of his mind, that he is going to get caught, because you can see now the organisation on the front end of the main field. A third team coming to the front here to try and help organise the chase. You've got Lotto Domo there, the red and black jerseys of Robbie McEwen's teammates. The white and blue jerseys are Faso Bortolo. Now mixing it in with the sprint are the Française de Jeu team, the team of not only the leader Brad McGee, but also a very good sprinter Jimmy Casper from France, but of course the Australian sprinter Baden Cook, who, if it is a tumultuous sprint down towards the end, we know he doesn't like to go in a straight line too often, does he?
No, and in fact, the one or two riders have criticised him this year, which he's carried those blows, but you know, sprinters by definition are tough men, and they go to the finish knowing there can be horrendous crashes, and they still go for them. This rider receiving all the cheers, Paul. He's been in the lead now for over 130 kilometres. 130
kilometres. The reason he's gone off the front like this is because he wanted to try and cheat the sprinters' chances of having their glory today. But the sprinters, I don't think, are going to lose that opportunity today. Today is certainly going to be another day for those men, and they are the men who take unbelievable risks. Once they see the finish line in front of them, they completely and utterly throw caution to the wind.
Open mouths of the Faso rider on the right there, as he's giving it everything for his team captain now, as they all are. The Française de Jeu are moving in, a team with their tails right up now, because they've got the leader in the King of the Mountains to tomorrow. And I would suggest, if things go according to plan, they could still have the leader of the race itself, Brad McGee. I think he's done enough today with that very valuable 4-second bonus at the first sprint should be enough to keep him in the overall classification. Has to be the right combination of men over the line, because there is a 20-second bonus for the winner, 12 for second, 8 for third, but the best sprinter is slightly further out of touch now, I think.
Well, the best sprinter yesterday, Phil, was Oscar Freire. He was 18 seconds back. Now with that time bonus, he's 22 seconds back. Jan Kersipuu wasn't too far off either. A good ride by him in 36th place. Baden Cook, the teammate of the overall leader, well, he was 45th, losing himself 20 seconds. But I think what is going to be important is another man here tries to get himself an ideal ringside seat. And all I can say is I hope there aren't any furrows going perpendicular to the road right now.
But it does give you some idea just how quick the cyclists are going when you take a look at the motorcyclists there. I think that said peloton at 50 seconds. They're right behind him. He can't look over his shoulder. It wouldn't be a pretty sight. The helicopters, the big pack of cyclists, all the following cars, they're right behind him on these straight roads. He's just going to go until they come to him, because one thing's for sure now, Andy Flickinger is not going back involuntarily. Or voluntarily rather. 45 seconds is the latest gap. This is not an easy road, Paul, either. Not only the crosswinds, when we get these shots, you can see it is gently uphill.
It is slightly undulating before we drop down into the city of Mo, but the thing is, on these roads, it's so open. There are no trees around here, just wheat fields. The main field know exactly where he is. They can see the cars, they can see the helicopter hovering above him. They know just exactly where he's positioned in relation to them, and they know when they want to pounce. We're now inside of 15 kilometers to go for the leader. It's going to come down to a big sprint, Phil.
Well, 15 kilometers, the clock starts now. We're pulling back. That is not a good sign. Here they come. The whole field have spent the whole day chasing this rider and two others. They caught the two others about 5 kilometers ago. Flickinger has refused to give up. They're saying 38 seconds. I think it's even closer now as they head up to the 15 kilometers banner. So they've left themselves 9 miles now to reshuffle the pack. And I think it's going to take them probably another kilometer or so to bring Andy back into the fold.
Well, with just one win under his belt, a small win last year in Paris-Corrèze. He's not one of the most successful bike riders on the circuit, but today the whole of France will know the name of Andy Flickinger, because he's been out on the attack since the 19th kilometer, and he did not give up like the other two men with him. He decided he would try and go it alone to the finish. He must have realized that he was prolonging the agony, just trying to survive off the front end of the main field. And look at these guys here. These are the men now who are basically sacrificing themselves for their team leader, their team sprinters in this instance. They've got no chance of finishing the top 15 or 20 positions today, but what they want to do is bring the whole of the race back together before we come into Mo and set up the sprint for the men who are able to take incredible risks towards the end of a race and spurt at the line at speeds approaching 45 miles an hour. That was a speed once recorded by Mario Cipollini in a sprint at the Tour de France, which is absolutely phenomenal on two little small wheels like that.
And if you're to fall off, you do appreciate how fast you were riding at the time of the fall. You may have seen just then, Paul, a glimpse of that blue tyre that Andy is riding. Well, I should tell you that is a tyre produced especially for the Tour by Michelin, because they've done a special centenary tyre, and it's actually got on the side the Tour de France 1903 to 2003. And you can buy them commercially, by the way. I have no idea how much they are, but they are a limited edition.
Sitting at the back here, 91, Sandy Cassar. Strange to see him riding at the back, because on a run-in like this, there is always the possibility of a mass pile-up in the middle of the main field, and that's how you'd find yourself losing between 30 seconds and a couple of minutes. And somebody at the back end of the main field has had a problem. Somebody is just being announced on race radio as having a mechanical incident at the back end of the main field. That's the race referee being pulled out, so the gap now, Phil, is well inside of 30 seconds, and I think pretty much almost over for Andy Flickinger, but a very brave effort.
It's fabulous effort. He will not give up here. 100 years written down there. A bit of picture breakup for you, and a map of France as well. The artistry is fantastic.
The man who's just had that mechanical incident at the back is Eric Zabel, and that is bad news. In fact, 3 or 4 of his teammates, there he is, he's just getting off right now.
Well, we're looking there very briefly at Eric Zabel. It was coming through rather garbled from the race, but Paul picked it up, and Zabel, at a moment when a sprinter does not want to be in trouble, has had to call his team back to give him a hand here. Now, Eric Zabel, 6 times the winner of the green jersey and a likely winner of the stage today, is going to have to waste energy now to rejoin. I'm not sure these riders will know he's in trouble because there's a little unwritten code in the world of professional cycling. You don't attack a man when he's down.
But the pressure is on right now, so they're not going to slow down and wait for him. They certainly won't attack and try and take up the pacemaking. But right now, Erik Zabel had 3 teammates stop almost immediately alongside him. He will get a very quick change. Andy Flickinger at the front end of the main field, about to get caught. There is the main field spread across the pavement of the Tour de France here right now. This could be good for Erik Zabel because as they catch him, as they catch Andy Flickinger, the main field will slow down slightly. Here, look at that quick wheel change for Erik Zabel in the German national champions jersey. His teammates right alongside him right now, Phil. It's going to be a long, hard battle for them. They've got to pace him onto the back end of the main field and then find a way through the peloton to put him back at the front end.
Well, they call back one of the best men there in Daniele Nardello, former champion of Italy, to get him back in that pack, and he's got the legs to do it. Caught at 11 kilometers out, so 138 he led for. The team time trial now of Telecom, bringing Erik back into the fray. Well, he might be thanking his lucky stars that he punctured when he did, because he's got just over 10 kilometers to recover. We'll be back for the finish. Don't go away. Till the finish, and all of the riders are back together on this opening stage, heading to a town we have never been before to, in Meaux, and so nobody can say they know the finish, and they've all got a clean shot at this now as the sprinters are lining up. You can bet on that. It's anybody's race now, Paul, and it looks as though Fassa Bortolo here are in the driving seat. So quite clearly, Alessandro Petacchi, a winner this year of 6 stages of the Giro d'Italia before he was taken out and eliminated from the race. But you don't lose your prizes when you're eliminated. But obviously, he's had a good rest period. He's had 3.5 weeks to rest, and now he's back into the long race again.
Talented bike rider, a very fast man. He's basically one of the integral members of the Italian squad last year that set Mario Cipollini up to win the World Championships in Zolder. He came back to the Giro d'Italia this year, has been so successful. I think he's on a dream season so far. He could not believe he had the pink jersey in the Giro d'Italia. He won so many stages. But watch out for the man there with the yellow bands on the shoulders of his jersey. That's Stuart O'Grady, national road racing champion of Australia, Commonwealth Games road race champion as well. This year, I think Stuart O'Grady has returned to the form that he had a couple of years ago. Let's not forget, last season he had a very nasty operation on the iliac artery, which put him out for the early part of the season, but he was still pretty good at the Tour.
Well, I noticed out there, Paul, a Calderola as well. That's the orangey-coloured jerseys are moving their men forward. Now they've got 2 good finishers. Fred Rodriguez of the United States, Romans Vane Saints, former world champion, the Latvian on that team. And they were in that sort of secondary flow on the right of the road there. So they too are moving up. This is going to be some sprint finish. Everybody wants to win a stage of the Tour de France, but as we've said earlier, this year being the 100th edition, everybody wants to go in the record books as well.
They do. It's getting desperate now. You can see Fassa Bortolo have done an awful lot of work on the front end of the main field. 121 there in the green and white, in fact, is Christophe Moreau. He will look to try and ride high in the overall classification, but it's the man in the white jersey with the green and yellow bands that just skipped through there, Stuart O'Grady, that he is trying to help out. Look at that. Jan Ullrich, steady as you like at the front end of the main field. There is Zabel just at the top end. He's come to the front end of the main field. He's a great bike rider, Phil. He will not give up. He'll be looking for the sprint win if he can today.
It's taken him 3 miles, 5 kilometres to get back to the front of the group after his flat tyre, but he's coming, and he's still using teammates to get him through. You know, if you ride behind a teammate, you're saving 30% of your energy. Zabel will need to do all of that if he's to take the sprinters on in the last 300 metres.
Well, this could change right now, because once the riders in the pink jerseys know that Erik Zabel has got himself to the front end of the main field, we will see, I believe, the Telecom trains start to take over. Bit of confusion right now. Nobody's got the reins of this main field. You see the communication there between the riders. Whenever there's any of this road furniture, they communicate to the riders behind. They do not want any other of their colleagues to go down in an accident. I can see just a bit further down there, Zabel is in around about 15th position, but he hasn't got too many teammates with him.
Well, I wouldn't think so now. He's used them all up to come up here, which means he'll have to switch his tactics onto looking for other teams with strong riders, what we call the lead-out men, the men that make the pace and then swing off and hope the last man they move over for is their top sprinter, and he will launch for the finish. Now, there's £5,000 or about $7,000 US for the man that wins the stage. If you're planning on winning the Tour de France, you can reckon on winning £250,000, which is very near to $500,000 US. But right now, these boys just want to win the stage. They don't go to the hotel and count the money. It is a prestige thing.
Well, you don't count it until you get to the end in Paris. The most important thing is to survive in a bike race like this. This is a great organisation by the riders in the lime green jerseys, Calderolo. They may be looking after Weinsteins, but maybe even Freddy Gonzalez, who a couple of years ago, the American rider on the Mappe squad, was a man I thought was going to be the next sprinter on the block. On the left there, the Australian national champion, Stuart O'Grady, looking very comfortable as well. This is big Axel Merckx in the middle here. He's looking for Robbie McEwen.
Well, that's good to see. Merckx is a man for the long term, yet he's coming to the front and doing a bit of pacemaking for the little Australian sprinter. Now, still the boys in pink, Zabel's men, are off to the right of our picture, and they're looking very twitchy now. They're trying to put Eric into a position.
Alexander Vinokourov is at the front of the main field, looking over his shoulder, very nervous. He wants to find Eric Zabel. McEwen is in about 10th position there. You can see him. He's got the Australian bands on his sleeve. He will be looking for one of his teammates. Looking further down, I still cannot find the position of Eric Zabel. The white jersey's coming forward right now at Française des Jeux. That will be Baden Cook's team, the Australian rider. Oh, those barriers were very close to these bike riders. Christophe Moreau is the man on the front. Had a terrible individual prologue yesterday, 137th for a man who's won the prologue in the past. Today he's put all that behind him. He's thinking about the team.
Well, this is going to be a very, very nervous first stage end to this Tour de France now. There are so many here. These riders, a lot of riders believe they have a chance at winning. Paolo Bettini, who's not a bad sprinter if he gets a good crack at it, in the green top to his jersey in the centre. 5 kilometres to go now. Here come the Française des Jeux team, the men who are on a high with the morale. They've got McGee in yellow. Tomorrow they'll also have Mangin in the polka dots. They're now looking if they can get cooked for the stage win.
Still nervous. Everybody's looking over. They're looking for their team leaders right now. Christophe Moreau is doing an excellent job on the front end, moving back towards the front here. You can see the team. There is Zabel, the red, yellow and black stripe across his jersey, indicating he's the national champion. A bit of a split in the main field here. There you can see just on the far side the Australian champion Stuart O'Grady. The orange jerseys, that will be Oscar Freira's team, 2 times a champion of the world, a winner of a stage in the Tour de France last year. This is nervous. This is going to be a dangerous sprint. On the front, Jan Ulrich himself.
This is a fingertip nervous reaction by these riders now, dodging the traffic furniture as they charge through the outskirts of Mo, heading for the finish. It is a tricky descent coming up not far away. Then there's a right turn over the river bridge. Then they've got a long approach to the line with an uphill finish. And nobody's ever finished here before, because this is a first time finish. 4 kilometres to go, just over 2 miles.
Brioche La Boulangère moving forward. They've got a pretty good sprinter for Jean-Patrick Nazon. He may well be the man trying to finish it off for them. Française des Jeux are getting themselves organised. This could be one for Baden Cook. We're on the slightly downhill section now, just outside of Mo, and it's very dangerous in the main field. I tell you one thing, Phil, if you touch your brakes right now, you'll slip down that field and lose 25 places in the peloton.
Well, the riders who've claimed first positions are not going to relinquish them now without a fight, and I probably mean quite literally, because they will be pushing and shoving out of sight of our cameras there as they fight to hold on to their line. And there's a move coming from Cofidis now as they try to also move into position. They have good sprinters too.
That is Médéric Klein from Cofidis, a man we've seen ride very well in the Giro d'Italia in the past, but not far in the middle of all that confusion. I have just seen the man from Germany, Eric Zabel. He's nicely sheltered out of the wind. He's got a teammate up alongside him. It looks like Kessler, the man in the pink jersey, will be looking after him. They're spreading across the road right now. They're touching a speed here. We are approaching 45 miles an hour as we descend into the outskirts of Mo. There's a nice little right-hand bend just at the end of this straight, and that's when the main field should stretch out into a long line. These riders know it. They've studied it in the book. They're going to charge into this corner at full speed.
Well, there's a little bit of pushing and shoving going on as they go under that 3 kilometres to go banner. Those lime greenish coloured jerseys there are being held by Freddy Rodriguez and Roman Weinstein, trying to be lined up for the sprint for that team out of Italy. But now it looks as though Zabel has said he's getting himself in position, because this is the Telecom team who've got to the front now. and there is a mass of riders trying to get through. There's Baden Cook, the white jersey, going round the corner now. About the best I could identify for you there.
Well, I saw Erik Zabel as well. He's at about 4th position. This is why you have to get into these corners so far to the front, because you can lose so many places in the main field. Any of those guys at the back now have lost all hopes of winning today's stage. It's only the men in the first 20 positions right now. Vinny Calderola are all over their bikes. This is Eddie Mazzolini on the front. He's a man who could finish high in the classification. Today he's riding for the team. Ronan Weinstein is up into 4th place. I haven't seen Freddie Rodriguez up towards the front. Frances de Jeux are doing a great job looking after their sprinter Baden Cook. That's what it's like when you've done your turn. You can do no more. The body is hurting at 2 kilometers to go.
Well, I have seen just off to the right there Angelo Furlan from Italy in the Alessio team, but I don't think Freddie Rodriguez has made it. Stuart O'Grady is coming up on the left. He knows now he's got to move into the slipstream of Erik Zabel. Little bit of switching there. Still Mazzolini, he's licking his lips as he tries to lead the line out. There is a chance for Weinstein. I don't think Rodriguez is going to get through.
Well, Robbie McEwen's caught in the back there. He's about 5 positions too far down. Stuart O'Grady is very close up to the front end. Zabel does not have any teammates at all with him, Phil. This is bad for Zabel. He doesn't have the lead out that he normally has. This is going to be a very confusing and dangerous sprint. We're up at 55 kilometers an hour right now. The next flag they will see will be the Flamme Rouge. 1 kilometer to go.
Well, Vino Calderola have made a big mistake here. The team rider on the front's looking around saying, where are my teammates gone? He's leading out the rest of the squad here. Not a good sign. He may as well peel off now, as now Pataki's boys line it up for the finish. Into the 1 kilometer to go. This is a win-all sprint here for about 10 men.
Well, Pataki's got his men there right now. 1st, 2nd, 3rd position. This is the ideal lead out. He'll be in 3rd. Somebody's gone down there. There you can see Bettini on the right-hand side of the road. Champion of Italy, won that title in a sprint just over 7 days ago. Again, confusion. Nobody's got the power. McEwen, Phil, is up into 3rd place.
McEwen is holding. Bettini also trying to get there on the back wheel of Erik Zabel. I think Stuart O'Grady has moved too far back. And there's been a mass pile-up there. I think his towel went down as the peloton completely crashes on the line. It's put forward now about 15 men here. And once again, Pataki has missed it. McEwen has missed it. McEwen is still poised for the best sprint here now. It's Robbie Hunter who's launched on the left of our picture, but out there in the centre is still McEwen. Pataki's going Zabel. Here comes Robbie McEwen now, but he's been pushed out a bit. Alessandro Pataki is coming like, here comes McEwen and Zabel. I think it's going to be Pataki on the line. Pogli, Bettini, Zabel, McEwen, they were right there as well. But again, Paula crash, and look at this. The peloton are at a standstill. Now, just to quickly tell you the rules, everybody will be given the time of the winner because they are inside the final kilometre.
Yeah, but the 1 or 2 riders, they're seriously injured on the ground there. Now, if Lance Armstrong is in this group at the moment, the referees tonight will give all of the riders who are in the main field at the 1 kilometre to go banner exactly the same time. There should be no change at all. Let's just have a look here and see how that crash went down. It was the big Kelme rider. His foot came out. He went immediately down onto the ground, and then it was pandemonium behind. You can just see over on the left-hand side there, Ulrich was caught out behind the crash as well. But all of the riders behind the crash, Phil, today will be given the same time. Now, there's US Postal. There's a lot of confusion there. I wonder whether or not Lance Armstrong was involved in that crash.
Well, let's certainly hope he was not. But I think the rider that went down was Towler of the Kelme squad, first to go. And then a massive, massive pile-up. Now, overall, the shoulders, there he is, and he was obviously involved there, Brad McGee, but he won't lose his yellow jersey. He's inside the last kilometre. This rule was brought in many years ago because of situations like this in the last kilometre, so they don't lose time. The clock stops at the kilometre to go for all of the riders who are together in the event of a fall. McGee quite clearly has fallen, but he'll still keep his yellow jersey.
Well, what a crash that was towards the end, and that's all it takes when you're full on at 65 kilometers an hour. You just do not have time to get out of the way. The majority of the main field is starting to come in right now, and I'm not sure whether or not Lance Armstrong was just stopped at the side of the road. There are 1 or 2 riders there, Phil, who have been seriously injured by that crash. They will get the same time as the winner at the end of the day. But I tell you one thing, this looks as if this could very well be Jimmy Casper, who's been caught up with a fairly nasty crash there. He will have taken a lot of risks to be towards the front.
But I think he's okay. It is a normal precaution to put him in a neck brace. It doesn't mean that he has a serious injury, and he was quite conscious. There's the crash as we see it. And Towler on the deck on the right, and the riders just piled in, one after another. Well, they continue to race at the front. They'll have heard the noise of the twisting metal, but they were too preoccupied with the finish. The peloton drifting in now. They will have all had a good look at the fall. It is so sad that when you come to the end of a hard day in the saddle and loses your chance to win a stage because of a mass pile-up like that. A lot of these riders have big stories to tell. And that's Jimmy Casper down there. He looks one rider here choosing the long way home, but he doesn't have to worry about time. Clearly got a bent back wheel that won't turn around. Okay, well, we'll take a break now, and we'll come back and we'll try and find out exactly what has happened at the end of this stage of the Tour de France. What a finish on day one. We'll be back very shortly. We're doing so well after that puncture to get up and finish third. Baden Cook there taking fourth place. So here is Pataki telling them all how he did it, and probably telling them he didn't know much about what was going on behind. He just went for it. But clearly he felt good all day, simply because he told his team to ride. Now Pataki himself is riding so well this year, can't do a thing wrong. This will be his 13th win of the season for him, and that is a tremendous record with still half the year to go.
I had a pretty hard time today on the road of the Tour, but it's fantastic the way the team led me out. The question now coming along is, it was one of his objectives to try and get himself a stage victory at the Tour.
Well, as we listen here to Pataki, as I say, Paul, that's his 13th victory of the season, 6 of them in the Tour of Italy. Now a first on so early on in the Tour de France, he can't go wrong.
Well, he can't go wrong. This is basically a dream season for a man like Alessandro Pataki. 6 wins at the Giro d'Italia. Unfortunately, having to be eliminated because of a rather silly crash in the individual time trial. He's not really had much competition since the end of the Giro d'Italia, apart from the Italian National Championship. So he will have had a hard day on the road today, but the team did a great job.
Let's have a look at that crash again. It was not a pretty sight at all. It was Gutierrez, the first rider to hit the ground there. He's also a tall man. And not a bad sprinter either, but then a pack of cards came over him, and one after another they were going down. Now the riders at the front, all of the sprinters were clear here, and Pataki was set up for the sprint brilliantly. Look at the face of Zabel to the right as he pushed through. McEwen didn't have the legs to get round Pataki at all. He was locked into him, but he couldn't quite get over him. So as we see Pataki get his first win of this year's Tour de France, we'll take a break and then rejoin us once again, and we'll keep you in touch as to what is happening on today's stage. What a finish.
Armstrong, and by Visa, it's everywhere you want to be, and by Land Rover, the most well-traveled vehicles on Earth.
Welcome back, where we have seen the finish of today's stage. Despite the mass pile-up, Alessandro Pataki is the stage winner. As they've now arrived in Mo, what has it done to the overall situation? Well, no change at all, really, because everybody given the same time. So McGee keeps his yellow jersey. Miller is second. The big climb done by number 7 there in the overall, Andy Flickinger. He comes over Lance Armstrong and the rest now, gaining those few seconds time bonuses out on the course, and clearly hanging on to the peloton on the run-in, so he didn't lose any time either. Oh, waiting for the prize presentation now as we look out across this lovely city. Well, all of the riders here coming in, and the boys here from Fassa Bortolo doing their job so well as the lead-out man now for Alessandro Pataki. We hadn't had the crash yet, though, so keep your eye to the right of our picture. At this moment in time, Paolo Bettini was there in the Italian champions jersey. Stuart O'Grady was just losing his position, and then the crash came. and Gutierrez was the first man down, and there were some riders took a rather heavy fall there, Paul.
Well, I tell you what, I can't really see why Gutierrez went down there, Phil. There was no problem. Nobody touched him. It just looked as if he went round the corner just a little bit too fast and lost control. But this is the moment when the sprint really opened up. Eric Zama was in fine position there, but this man, Alessandro Patacchi, on the front there in the blue and white jersey, is proving to have an awful lot of power. This will be his 13th win of the season, 6 of those in the Giro d'Italia. But I think getting a win at the Tour de France will crown his season, because he really has proved to be the dominating sprinter of the season so far. But he's going to have a lot more fights and run-ins to come with the man on the right there, Eric Zabel, who's in excellent form, and of course the man on the left there, Robbie McEwen, and not too far away from the top of the leaderboard either was Oscar Freire.
Yeah, but look at the face of Zabel here. This is the grand old man of the Sprint King, because he's had the green jersey 6 times. And he's still there. Such a wise old man he really is. But Patacchi today has taken the first road race stage. No yellow jersey awaits him. But I can tell you that man is sprinting so well this year. He's just 29 years of age now, Alessandro Patacchi. And he's had 13 wins since the season began. He's been winning races since February. Of course, his great period came in May when he won the opening stage as well of the Giro d'Italia. Went on to win 5 more before being eliminated from the race in the mountains. Well, at least Patacchi kept out of the trouble in that big sprint finish today, but we can go to Frankie Andreu now, because he's found Bradley McGee, who limped over the finishing line.
How crazy was the last 20 kilometers? Was it, I mean, first day of the Tour is always kind of nuts.
You know what? Even though it was crazy, it's not like I've experienced before, especially on the first day of the Tour. Even early in the race, you know, as far as tours go, it's pretty calm. I think that first 28k rollout sort of relaxed everybody.
You showed you were a sprinter with that first bonus, almost securing yourself the yellow jersey. What about for tomorrow?
Yeah, I mean, that was the effort in it, you know, just to say to everyone else, hey, look, I'm up for defending this jersey, so if you're going to try to get off me, make sure you're on a good day, you know.
Enjoy it.
Cheers, I am.
Well, thanks, Frankie. Well, whatever we think of the crash, at least McGee has kept his yellow jersey for a second day. Now let's see the man who won the stage. He's on the podium. Here he is, Alessandro Patacchi, getting Italy and Fassa Bortolo the first road race stage. So he has done tremendously well here, Alessandro Patacchi. Salutes the crowd. I'm not surprised he is smiling, Alessandro Patacchi here. He's conquered some of the great finishers, men who will do battle daily when the roads permit them in this year's Tour de France.
Well, this will in fact make the Italians very happy, because in last year's Tour de France they only got themselves 1 stage victory, and that went to this man's teammate Dario Frigo, who won stage 17, and that was a mountain stage. And in fact the year before, Phil, Italy didn't get a stage win at all in the Tour de France, so they're going to be rejoicing with that win by this man, who they regard as their great future star, possibly the man to replace Mario Cipollini.
Well, he'd never won a stage of the Tour of Italy until this year. He kept finishing second to Cipollini. Now he's won 6th in this year's Giro d'Italia, and he never won a stage of the Tour de France until today. This is the 2nd time he's run the race. The last time, 2001, he finished 97th. It's not where they finish in Paris to these sprinters, it's just winning stages. So he'll feel totally ready now for the next 3 weeks in the saddle. Well, there were so many riders involved in that crash today. I don't suppose we'll ever know how many, but Frankie Andreu has found one. He's talking to the Australian Nick Gates.
I just caught up with Nick Gates, our gateway to the Tour. Nick, thrown into the fire today, chasing on the front and looked like a little bit involved in the crash. Tell me about it.
Yeah, just some guys went down 500 out, and I was right there, right behind Robbie, and just, you know, guys in front, and just went straight over the top. So bit of a rough day to start with.
Yeah. How long were you on the front for today, chasing for trying to help Robbie for that stage win?
Oh, the team was on the front for 80 kilometres. So who won?
Patacchi.
Okay.
Patacchi was out, so I guess you'll be at it again for tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll try again tomorrow.
All right. Well, I hope you feel okay and get healed up.
Thanks, mate.
All right. Thanks.
Well, thanks, Frankie and Nick. Well, we're looking at pictures earlier here because Tyler Hamilton has gone to hospital, and he's reported to have told the race doctors that he is giving up the Tour. Now, I emphasise this is still conjecture. No official communique has reached us. As regards Levi Leipheimer, he's also gone to hospital for a lower back x-ray. But I can tell you that Lance Armstrong, uninjured, he changed bikes with a teammate and did cross the line in 107th place.
despite the chaos at the finish, despite being involved in that accident, Brad McGee is still the leader of this bike race by an extended margin right now, Phil, because he got himself 4 seconds out on the course.
He licked his lips there, the thought of pulling on the maillot jaune for the second day. He's a long way away from the record for an Australian. That's held by Phil Anderson. I think it's about 18 days, not quite 15 days, I think it is, for Phil Anderson in the 80s. But it's a good start for this young man. And I have to say now that Brad McGee here, we pretty certainly went down in the crash, but I took a good look at him when he crossed the line, and we did not see any signs of a scratch or traces of blood on him. So I think it was a pretty simple fall, or he was simply delayed. But we do think he fell off his bike, because there's the pictures being pushed home by a teammate. It's not been all good news today, because Jimmy Casper, his sprinter teammate, was seen to be the worst injured in that crash, and they put a neck brace on him. So that's routine when you have an injury, so I think he'll be okay. But there we are, Paul. What a great ride that was, though. Brad is going to be, the dream continues.
Well, the dream continues, but I think what it does put into perspective is everybody says, oh, Lance Armstrong is going to win the Tour de France for a 5th time. Something like that can happen on any one of the 23 days to come, and Armstrong will be aware of that and attentive of that. That's why his team are so important. They're always around him, always protecting him to keep him out of that kind of danger.
And this is why riders never commit, no matter how far ahead they are. Remember, in 1971, Louis Ocaña was nearly 10 minutes ahead of Eddie Merckx. Louis Ocaña crashed out the Tour, Eddie Merckx won. Here we are, back on the podium. The green jersey was on loan to David Miller all day because he was second yesterday in the prologue, which means that McGee couldn't wear green. So the green jersey now, rightfully the owner of Robbie McEwen, who won that competition last year, while his countryman, Bradley McGee, signs autographs on his version of the maillot jaune. The maillot vert is on the shoulders of Robbie McEwen. There's 7 Australians in this race. You think there are about 150 of them.
Unbelievable. They are so dominant, so aggressive, but let's not forget they have to travel an awful long way from home to come here to get themselves a lead in a competition like this.
Well, congratulations all round here. The Premier Minister of France, Jean-Pierre Raffarini, there he is, and Bernard Hinault, 5 times a winner. So as we look down, let's go and catch up now with Kirsten Gubb. Kirsten.
All right, thanks, Phil and Paul. Bob, boy, a lot of excitement for the finish of stage 1. Not how we like to see things end up with that huge crash.
Huge crash on the finishing straightaway. Looked like a Kelme rider slipping out of the pedal. I've had that happen to me in a breakaway situation, and I can tell you it's very dangerous. He went down, and it just started a chain reaction until the whole road was filled with bikers cascading down the tarmac. A lot of our GC contenders delayed by that. Paul made a very good point. That's why the team is so important. You have to keep your leader out of those situations. That's why we see Jan Ullrich and Lance Armstrong so close to the front of the field towards the end of these stages, just to prevent that type of situation. If that had happened just a few hundred meters before, when they were still outside of the 1 kilometer to go barrier, then it would be a totally different GC situation. So very dangerous stages, so much on the line. Pataki coming up with a great stage win, but anything can happen day to day.
All right, well, thank you for that insight on that. From the bad to the good, I have to give it to Bob Roll. He predicted about 30 kilometers out that it would be Alessandro Pataki. Yes, and indeed, his prediction was correct. Well, join us tomorrow for stage 2. It begins in La Fuerte-sous-Joie. Again, we're going to be live back here again at 9 a.m. and then again, you can see it at 8 p.m. We'll have interviews and analysis, also a lot of reports from our different correspondents. Again, stage 2 tomorrow. It begins in La Fuerte-sous-Joie. Tell me about this stage a little bit.
Flat stage, 2 King of the Mountains along the way. 3 intermediate sprints we see are so important, so competitive. 204.5 kilometers up to Sedan. Should be another sprinter stage. It was very similar to today's stage, but we'll see. It should be a breakaway early on and then a sprint at the finish.
All right, we were talking about 204.5 kilometers tomorrow, 125 miles. Now, if you want to join us, you can actually go to the web, go to olntv.com to keep track of all the action in the 2003 Tour de France. For Bob Roll, Sam Posey, Frankie, Phil, Paul, Pam, and our entire OLN crew, I'm Kirsten Gum here in France. We will see you tomorrow. Don't miss any of the action right here on OLN.